Every Tuesday morning, in a small diner on Maple Street, a quiet old man sits in the corner booth sipping black coffee, his newspaper spread out like a map of the world. Raymond Carter, a retired master sergeant, is a fixture here at Betty's Diner, his silver hair catching the morning light, his faded American flag pinned barely noticeable on his jacket. For 5 years, he's claimed this spot, not out of stubbornness, but because it feels right. A clear view of the door, the parking lot, the pulse of this small Ohio town. Old habits from 30 years in the Army don't fade. They linger, like the ache in his leg on rainy days. But today, something shifts. A shadow falls over his table. A biker, all leather and menace, looms above him. "Move it, old man, this is my table," the voice snarls thick with contempt. Before Raymond can respond, a sharp slap cracks across his cheek, the sound ricocheting through the diner like a gunshot. The room freezes. Forks hover, conversations die, and every eye locks onto the old man waiting. What happens next will leave you speechless. Stick around, because what happens next changes everything. Raymond's cheek burns, a hot sting that pulses with each heartbeat. But it's the weight of every stare that cuts deeper. The waitresses, the families, the regulars. They all know him. Yet in this moment, he's alone, exposed, the newspaper crumpled beneath his trembling fingers. He's 68, 3 weeks past his birthday. And though his back is still straight, his hands steady, the slap strips away the quiet dignity he's carried for decades. He feels the eyes of the diner, not just watching, but judging. Will he shrink? Will he run? The biker, a mountain of a man named Travis Kane, stands over him, his tattooed arms crossed, a smirk twisting his face. Travis is no stranger here. For weeks he's stormed into Betty's, his Harley roaring in the parking lot, his Iron Hawks crew trailing behind, claiming space like they own it. Most folks look away, hoping to avoid trouble. Raymond did too, at first. Last week, he slid to another table without a word. The week before, he did the same. But today something in him refuses to bend. He adjusts his glasses, knocked askew by the blow, and sets them carefully back on his nose. His hands don't shake, not yet, though adrenaline surges through him, sharp and familiar, like the moments before a mission. He's been here before. Not in a diner, but in the deserts of Iraq, the mountains of Afghanistan, the tense standoffs of the Cold War. 30 years of service taught him to measure his moves, to weigh the cost of every action. He thinks of his father, a factory worker who stood up to bullies in their Cleveland neighborhood, teaching him that a man's worth isn't in his fists, but in his resolve. He thinks of his son, Matthew, a lieutenant colonel now, who grew up on stories of duty, not fairy tales. How can he face Matthew if he lets this slide? How can he face himself? Travis laughs, a low, mocking sound, and slides into the booth, his leather jacket creaking as he spreads out, claiming the space like a conqueror. "Get lost, Grandpa," he says, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Nobody moves. Betty, the owner, hovers near the counter, her hands twisting a dish rag, her face pale. She's seen Travis's temper before, the way he snaps at her staff, the way his crew intimidates anyone who dares complain. The other customers avoid eye contact, their meals forgotten. A young mother hurries her kids toward the door, her eyes darting nervously. Raymond feels the weight of their fear, their silence, and it stirs something deep within him. He's not just fighting for his seat. He's fighting for the diner, for Betty, for the kind of world where a man can drink his coffee in peace. He stands, slowly, his limp barely noticeable, and moves to a small table by the window. The diner exhales, but the tension lingers, thick as the smell of frying bacon. Travis orders the biggest breakfast on the menu, his voice booming, making crude jokes about the waitresses, about respect, about how some people need to learn their place. Raymond sips his fresh coffee, his eyes fixed on the parking lot. He's not running, he's waiting. His cheek still stings, but it's the memory of his son's face that keeps him steady. Matthew, who followed him into the army, who faced his own wars, who carries his own scars. Raymond taught him to stand tall, to protect what matters. He can't fail that lesson now. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out his phone, and dials. The call is short, his voice low, calm. "Just need you to swing by Betty's when you get a chance," he says. No mention of the slap, no plea for help. But Matthew will know, he always does. Raymond hangs up and settles back, his coffee cooling, the newspaper forgotten. Travis doesn't notice the call, too busy bragging to his crew, his laughter filling the diner like a storm. But outside, the world is shifting. Raymond knows it, he feels it in his bones, the way he felt the approach of danger in combat. He's not just an old man in a diner. He's a soldier, a father, a man who's earned his place. And he's not done fighting. The diner feels smaller now, the air heavy with unspoken questions. Will Travis push further? Will Betty call the cops? The regulars steal glances at Raymond, their expressions a mix of pity and respect. They know him as the quiet guy who tips well, who nods politely, who never talks about the wars he fought. They don't know the young sergeant whose photo hangs near the coffee station, his face unlined, his eyes sharp in desert camo. They don't know the man who trained soldiers, who carried his wounded men to safety, who buried friends and kept going. But they're about to. Raymond's not looking for a fight, not the kind Travis understands. He's looking for something bigger, something that lasts, and it's coming faster than anyone expects. Raymond Carter sits at the small table by the window, his coffee untouched, the sting on his cheek fading but the weight of the moment growing heavier. The diner hums with nervous energy, Travis Kane's voice cutting through the clatter of plates as he boasts about teaching some old fool a lesson. Raymond's eyes drift to the parking lot, but his mind is elsewhere, pulling him back through decades of dust and duty. He's 18 again, a skinny kid from Cleveland, signing his name on the Army enlistment papers in 1973, his heart pounding with equal parts fear and pride. He didn't know then what 30 years would demand of him, the places he'd see, the men he'd lose. He didn't know he'd carry those years like medals, heavy but earned. Travis's laughter snaps him back, a harsh reminder of the present, but it's the past that steadies him now, the lessons carved into his bones. He remembers Germany in the 80s, standing watch along the Iron Curtain, the Cold War's chill seeping into his boots. He was 25, already a sergeant, responsible for men barely older than boys. One night, a private broke down, homesick, scared he'd never see Ohio again. Raymond sat with him, shared a cigarette, told him about the lake back home where he'd fish with his dad. He didn't promise safety, only purpose. That kid made it home. Sent Raymond a Christmas card every year until he passed. Those moments, the quiet ones, defined him more than the firefights. They taught him that strength isn't just in standing tall. It's in lifting others up, even when your own knees are shaking. Iraq was different, hotter, meaner. He was 40 by then, a master sergeant, training soldiers who reminded him of his son Matthew. He'd tell them to keep their heads down, to trust their training, but he'd also tell them why they were there. Not for oil or politics, but for the guy next to them. He took shrapnel in '03, a JAG piece that still aches when storms roll in. The Purple Heart sits in a drawer at home, but the real scars are the names he carries, men who didn't come back. He thinks of them now, their faces flickering like ghosts, and wonders if they'd be ashamed of him for hesitating, for moving to this table instead of standing his ground. But he's not hesitating, he's choosing his moment. Afghanistan was his last war, the one that changed him most. He was 52, gray creeping into his hair, but still out there, leading patrols through mountains that felt like another planet. He saw young soldiers, Matthew's age, face fear and find courage. He saw Matthew himself change, his son's letters growing shorter, his eyes more guarded each time he came home. Matthew had followed him into the Army, graduated West Point. Become an officer Raymond would have saluted without question. But the wars took something from them both. Raymond came back with a limp. Matthew came back with nightmares, scanning rooms for exits, jumping at loud noises. They never talked about it, not directly, but they understood each other in the silences, the way only soldiers can. He thinks of Matthew now, the boy who'd sit on his knee, listening to stories of honor, of duty, of standing up to bullies. Raymond told him about his own father, who'd faced down a foreman who cheated workers, not with fists but with quiet resolve. Those stories shaped Matthew, turned him into a man who'd lead soldiers through hell and still come home to serve. 3 years ago, Matthew moved back to their hometown, took a job at the recruiting station, helping kids find their path. Raymond's proud of him, prouder than of any commendation he ever pinned to his chest. But pride isn't enough to erase the sting of that slap, the humiliation of being watched, judged, dismissed. Travis's voice grows louder, mocking the waitresses, calling Raymond names that make the younger customers flinch. The diner feels smaller, the air thick with fear. Betty hovers near the kitchen, her hands trembling. Raymond knows she's thinking of calling the police, but he also knows Travis doesn't fear cops. The Iron Hawks have run this town ragged for months, intimidating shop owners, starting fights, claiming streets like they're a gang from some old movie. Raymond's seen their kind before, not just here, but in war zones, men who mistake fear for respect. He's trained soldiers to face worse than Travis Kane, But this isn't a battlefield. It's a diner, a place of comfort, of community. And that's what makes it worth fighting for. He sips his coffee, cold now, and feels the weight of his flag pin, small but solid against his jacket. It's not about the flag itself, but what it stands for. Years of sacrifice, of showing up, of doing what's right even when it's hard. He thinks of the photo on the diner's wall, the young sergeant in desert camo, the man he used to be. Most folks don't connect that soldier to the quiet guy in the corner, but Raymond knows who he is. He's not fighting for a booth. He's fighting for the right to exist, to be seen, to hold his ground in a world that sometimes forgets what men like him have given. He's fighting for Matthew, for the lessons he passed down, for the kind of man he wants his son to be. The parking lot is still empty, but Raymond feels the clock ticking, not in minutes, but in choices. He could walk away, let Travis win, let the diner become another place where fear rules. Or he can stay, not because he's stubborn, but because he's learned that some fights are about more than the moment. They're about the next generation, the next soldier, the next kid who needs to know that bullies don't get to decide what's right. He adjusts his glasses, his hands steady now, and waits. The past has taught him patience, but it's also taught him resolve. Travis thinks he's won. He's about to learn how wrong he is. Raymond Carter's fingers rest on the edge of his coffee cup, the ceramic cool against his skin, as he watches the parking lot through the diner's smudged window. Travis Kane's laughter fills the air, a jagged sound that grates against the quiet clink of silverware and the hushed murmurs of the other customers. The biker's voice is a weapon, loud and deliberate, meant to shrink everyone else in the room. Raymond feels it, the way the diner's warmth has been replaced by a brittle tension, the way Betty's hands shake as she refills a coffee pot, the way the regulars avoid looking at Travis's booth. But Raymond's mind is steady, his pulse even, honed by years of waiting for the right moment in places far more dangerous than this. He's made his call, and now he waits, not for rescue, but for something bigger, a chance to show what he's spent a lifetime teaching. The phone call was brief, his voice calm, almost casual. "Just swing by Betty's when you get a chance," he told Matthew. No details, no mention of the slap that still burns his cheek, no hint of the humiliation that lingers like smoke. He didn't need to say more. Matthew, his son, has always known how to read the silences, the way Raymond taught him to read a battlefield. They share a language built on years of letters sent across oceans, of late-night talks after deployments, of understanding what it means to carry the weight of service. Matthew will come, not because Raymond is in trouble, but because he hears the quiet resolve in his father's voice, the kind that says this moment matters. Inside the diner, Travis leans back in the corner booth, his leather jacket creaking, his boots propped on the seat Raymond occupied just minutes ago. He's telling a story now, his voice booming about some bar fight he won, some guy who didn't know his place. The Iron Hawks, his crew, chuckle from a nearby table, their presence a shadow over the room. A waitress, barely out of high school, forces a smile as she sets a plate of pancakes in front of Travis. "Don't forget the extra syrup, sweetheart," he says, his tone dripping with condescension. She nods, hurrying away, her hands trembling. Raymond watches her, his jaw tightening. He knows her name. Sarah knows she's saving up for college, knows her mom works the night shift at the hospital. This diner isn't just a place to eat. It's a piece of the town's heart, and Travis is trampling it. He thinks of Matthew again, not as the officer he is now, but as the boy who'd sit at their kitchen table, wide-eyed, listening to stories of courage. Raymond never told him about the medals or the missions that made headlines. He told him about the small moments, sharing a canteen with a scared private, writing letters home for a soldier who couldn't find the words, standing watch so his men could sleep. Those were the stories that shaped Matthew, that sent him to West Point, that made him the kind of leader who'd walk through fire for his men. But they also left scars. Matthew's last tour in Afghanistan brought nightmares that woke him screaming, a habit of checking exits that never faded. Raymond sees those scars in his son's eyes, even now, 3 years after Matthew moved back to town to work at the recruiting station. They don't talk about it, but they carry it together. The diner's clock ticks on, each second stretching the tension tighter. Betty hovers near the counter, her phone in hand, debating whether to call the police. Raymond catches her eye, gives a slight shake of his head. Not yet. He's not afraid of Travis, not in the way the others are. He's faced men like him before. Bullies who thrive on fear, who mistake silence for weakness. In Kuwait, He stared down a contractor who tried to intimidate his unit, his voice steady as he reminded the man that soldiers don't bend to threats. In Afghanistan, he negotiated with a local warlord, his eyes never leaving the man's, his hand close to his weapon, but his words doing the real work. Travis is no warlord, no soldier. He's just a man who's never learned what respect costs. Raymond's hand brushes the flag pin on his jacket, a reflex, a reminder. He thinks of the men he trained, the ones who looked to him for answers in the chaos of war. He told them respect isn't demanded. It's earned through sacrifice, through showing up when it's hard. Travis demands fear, not respect, and that's why he'll lose. Raymond's not fighting for himself. He's fighting for Sarah, for Betty, for the kids who come to this diner after school, for the town that's been his home since he hung up his uniform. He's fighting for Matthew, to show him that the lessons he taught still hold, that a man doesn't back down when it's right to stand. Outside, the parking lot remains empty, but Raymond feels the shift coming, like the calm before a storm. Travis doesn't notice, too caught up in his own performance, his voice drowning out the diner's heartbeat. The other customers eat in silence, their eyes darting to Raymond, to Travis, to the door. They're waiting, too, though they don't know it. Raymond sips his coffee, cold now, and thinks of his father's words, spoken decades ago in a Cleveland alley after a bully backed down. You don't fight to win, Ray. You fight to teach. This is his classroom now, this diner, this moment. He's not calling Matthew to save him. He's calling him to witness, to learn, to carry the lesson forward. The weight of the slap lingers, not in pain but in purpose. Raymond's not angry, not in the way Travis expects. His anger is quieter, deeper, forged in years of seeing good men fall, of watching the world test those who stand for something. He knows what's at stake. A booth, yes, but also a principle, a way of life. He adjusts his glasses, his hands steady, his eyes sharp. The diner feels like a held breath, and Raymond is its center. Not because he's loud, but because he's still. He's waited in foxholes, in command posts, in hospital beds. He can wait now. Matthew is coming, and with him, something Travis can't imagine. The lesson is about to begin. The diner's air feels thicker now, Travis Kane's voice a relentless drumbeat, mocking the quiet that once defined Betty's. Raymond Carter sits by the window, his coffee untouched, his eyes locked on the parking lot where the morning sun glints off chrome and asphalt. The slap still echoes in his mind, not as pain, but as a challenge, a line crossed that demands an answer. He's calm, his hands steady, but inside, his resolve burns like a signal fire. The other customers steal glances, their meals forgotten, while Betty hovers near the counter, her phone clutched tight, her courage faltering under Travis's shadow. The Iron Hawks laugh at their table, feeding off the tension, their presence a stain on the diner's warmth. But Raymond knows something they don't. He's not alone, and the tide is about to turn. Travis leans back in the corner booth, Raymond's booth, his boots scuffing the vinyl as he brags about his latest ride, his latest fight. You should have seen the guy's face, he says, his crew roaring with laughter. Thought he was tough till I showed him what's what. The words are meant to wound, to shrink Raymond further, but Raymond doesn't flinch. He's faced worse than words. Bullets, bombs, the weight of sending men to their deaths. He thinks of Matthew, his son who's on his way, not to fight his battle, but to stand with him, to see what it means to hold ground. Raymond's call wasn't a plea. It was a summons, a passing of the torch, a reminder that some fights are bigger than one man. The parking lot stirs. A low rumble grows, not the growl of a Harley, but the steady hum of engines moving with purpose. Raymond's eyes narrow, catching the glint of polished metal, the flash of military green. 3 army vehicles roll in, tires crunching gravel, followed by Matthew's black pickup. The diner falls silent, even Travis pausing mid-sentence, his smirk faltering as heads turn toward the windows. Doors open, and out steps Matthew Carter, his Lieutenant Colonel silver oak leaves gleaming on his uniform, his face set like stone. Behind him, 12 soldiers in full-dress blues form up with precision, their boots snapping against the pavement, their presence a wall of discipline and pride. Their veterans, men and women Matthew recruited and trained, their eyes sharp, their shoulders square. They were at a ceremony when Raymond's call came, but they dropped everything, sensing the weight in Matthew's voice. The diner's door swings open, the bell jangling, and Matthew steps inside, his gaze sweeping the room. He's taller than Raymond, broader, but carries the same quiet strength, the same unyielding core. He spots his father first, the red mark on Raymond's cheek a silent accusation. "You okay, Dad?" he asks, his voice low, steady, but laced with something fierce. Raymond nods toward Travis's booth, his eyes calm but unyielding. Matthew follows his gaze and his jaw tightens, a flicker of anger breaking through his control. He sees Travis sprawled out, the Iron Hawks watching, the diner's fear hanging like fog. He understands. This isn't just about a booth. It's about everything his father taught him. Honor, duty, the refusal to let bullies win. Matthew turns to Travis, his boots clicking on the linoleum as he approaches the corner booth. The room holds its breath. Lieutenant Colonel Carter, he says, his voice clear, commanding, but not loud. Step outside. We need to talk. There's no threat in his tone, no posturing, just the weight of a man who's led soldiers through war, who knows what real strength looks like. Travis laughs, but it's hollow, his eyes darting to his crew, then to the soldiers filling the diner's entrance. They stand tall, their uniforms a testament to sacrifice, their silence louder than any shout. Travis's confidence cracks, his hand twitching on the table. He's outnumbered, not just in bodies, but in something deeper. Resolve, purpose, the kind of courage he's never had to earn. The Iron Hawks shift in their seats, their bravado fading as they realize these aren't small town cops they can intimidate. These are soldiers, men and women who faced enemies Travis can't imagine, who've carried their wounded through fire, who've buried friends and kept marching. Matthew doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence and the soldiers behind him speak for him. Travis slides out of the booth, his movements jerky, his smirk gone. He mutters something about not wanting trouble, but it's weak, a child's excuse. He follows Matthew outside, his crew trailing, their heads low, their leather jackets suddenly less imposing. The diner exhales, but the tension lingers, all eyes on Raymond, who remains by the window, his face unreadable. Outside, the soldiers form a loose semicircle in the parking lot, not threatening, but present, their discipline a contrast to the Iron Hawks' chaos. Matthew stands face to face with Travis, his voice low, controlled, but cutting. This ends now, he says. You don't get to walk in here and disrespect my father or anyone else. Travis tries to argue, but his words falter under Matthew's gaze, the same gaze that steadied soldiers in combat. Raymond watches from the window, his heart swelling with pride, not just for Matthew, but for the soldiers who came, for the diner that's more than a building, for the town that's worth protecting. He thinks of the men he trained, the ones who looked to him for guidance. This is what he taught them, not to fight for glory, but to stand for what's right. The conversation outside is short, but it shifts something fundamental. Travis's shoulders slump, his defiance crumbling under the weight of Matthew's words, the soldiers' presence, the truth of what they represent. Raymond knows this isn't about violence. It's about showing Travis what he'll never understand. Strength born of sacrifice, of showing up, of earning respect through decades of quiet service. The diner begins to stir, customers whispering, Betty wiping her eyes with her apron. Raymond sips his coffee, cold but steadying, and waits. The lesson isn't over. Travis will return, and when he does, Raymond will be ready, not with anger, but with the dignity he's carried through 3 wars, the dignity Travis can't touch. Raymond Carter sits by the window, the diner's hum returning as the soldiers' boots echo faintly outside. The parking lot is a stage now. Matthew and Travis Kane locked in a conversation that's less about words and more about wills. Raymond's coffee is cold, but his hands are steady, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding beyond the glass. The red mark on his cheek has faded, but the weight of the slap lingers, not as pain, but as a spark that's ignited something fierce within him. He's not thinking of revenge. He's thinking of the diner, of Betty's trembling hands, of Sarah's forced smile, of the town that deserves to feel safe. He's thinking of Matthew, his son, who's out there carrying the lessons Raymond spent a lifetime teaching. The soldiers stand in a loose semicircle, their dress blues a quiet testament to sacrifice, their presence enough to make the Iron Hawks shrink. Inside, the diner is alive with whispers, customers leaning toward the windows, their fear giving way to curiosity. Betty wipes down the counter, her movements slow, her eyes darting to Raymond. She wants to say something, to thank him for not escalating, for not giving Travis the fight he craved. But Raymond's focus is elsewhere, his mind tracing the arc of this moment. He's been here before, not in a diner, but in war zones, where the difference between chaos and order was a single, deliberate choice. He thinks of a night in Iraq, negotiating with a village elder, his voice calm despite the rifles pointed at him. He didn't win that night with threats. He won with respect, with the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. That's what he's teaching now, to Travis, to the diner, to Matthew. The door swings open, the bell jangling, and Travis steps back inside, his crew trailing like shadows. The bravado is gone, his shoulders hunched, his eyes avoiding the room. The soldiers follow, Matthew at their head, his face unreadable but his posture commanding. Travis stops at Raymond's table, his boots scuffing the linoleum, his hands twitching at his sides. The diner falls silent again, every eye on the biker, waiting for what comes next. "I'm sorry," Travis mumbles, his voice low, unsteady. "Didn't mean to disrespect you." Raymond looks up, his eyes steady, not cold but piercing. The kind of gaze that's seen through men in 3 different wars. He doesn't speak right away, letting the silence stretch, letting Travis feel the weight of his own words. "You think respect is something you take?" Raymond says finally, his voice quiet but clear, each word measured. "It's not. It's something you earn through what you do, not what you demand." Travis shifts, his face flushed, but he doesn't argue. He nods, barely, and reaches into his pocket, pulling out a $20 bill. "For your coffee," he says, setting it on the table. Raymond doesn't touch it. He leans back, his glasses catching the light, and nods once, a gesture that's neither forgiveness nor dismissal, but an acknowledgement. "Go on," he says, "and make sure this doesn't happen again." Travis hesitates, then turns, his crew following, their leather jackets no longer a threat but a retreat. The diner exhales as the Iron Hawks file out, their Harleys roaring to life in the parking lot. Then fading down Maple Street, Matthew slides into the chair across from Raymond, his soldiers taking up positions near the door, their presence a quiet reassurance. "You didn't have to do that," Dad Matthew says, his voice soft, but there's pride in his eyes, the kind that bridges their shared history. Raymond smiles, just a flicker, and adjusts his glasses. "Had to," he says. "Not for me, for them." He nods toward the diner, toward Betty. Sarah, the customers who are starting to eat again, their voices creeping back. Matthew nods, understanding, the way he always has. Raymond thinks of the soldiers outside, the ones Matthew trained, the ones who dropped everything to come here. He thinks of the photo on the diner's wall, the young sergeant he used to be, the man who trained men to face fear, to stand for something. This moment, this victory, isn't about Travis's apology. It's about showing the diner, the town, that strength doesn't need fists or guns. It's about the quiet resolve of men and women who've served, who've sacrificed, who show up when it matters. He thinks of his father, who taught him to stand up to bullies, not to win, but to teach. He's done that today, not just for Travis, but for everyone watching. For the kids who'll hear this story, for Matthew who'll carry it forward. Betty approaches, her apron twisted in her hands, and sets a fresh coffee in front of Raymond. "On the house," she says, her voice thick with gratitude. Raymond nods, his fingers brushing the flag pin on his jacket, a reflex that grounds him. The soldiers begin to disperse, some shaking Raymond's hand, their respect unspoken but palpable. Matthew stays, his new rank insignia glinting, a reminder of how far they've both come. They don't talk about the slap, or Travis, or the soldiers who turned a diner into a battlefield of principle. They talk about small things. Matthew's promotion, the lake where they used to fish, the way the town feels like home. But beneath it, there's an understanding, a bond forged in service, in sacrifice, in moments like this. The diner settles back into its rhythm, the clatter of plates, the hum of conversation, the smell of bacon and coffee reclaiming the air. Raymond sips his new coffee, warm now, and watches the parking lot, empty again but different, as if the ground itself has shifted. He's not a hero, not in the way the movies tell it. He's a man who's served, who's taught, who stood his ground. Travis learned something today, but so did the diner, so did Matthew, so did Raymond himself. Respect isn't a gift. It's a currency earned through years of showing up, of choosing right over easy. And today, Raymond paid in full, not for himself, but for everyone who calls this place home. The diner hums with life again, the clatter of plates, and the low murmur of voices weaving a fragile normalcy. Raymond Carter sits by the window, his coffee warm in his hands, the parking lot quiet now, the dust settled where the Harleys roared away. Matthew sits across from him, his dress blues a stark contrast to the diner's faded checkered floor, his new rank insignia catching the light. The soldiers have left, their presence lingering like a promise kept, their handshakes and nods a silent tribute to Raymond's stand. The red mark on his cheek is gone, but the weight of the day remains, not as a burden, but as a milestone, a moment that's reshaped the air in Betty's diner. Raymond's eyes drift to the photo on the wall, the young sergeant he was, and he feels the arc of his life, 30 years of service, a son who carries his lessons, A town that's starting to remember what courage looks like. Word of the confrontation spreads faster than the morning's coffee orders. By noon, customers linger longer, their whispers turning to stories, not of Travis Kane's apology, but of Raymond, the quiet man who didn't back down. Betty refuses his money when he tries to pay, her eyes wet as she sets a slice of pie in front of him. "This place is yours, Ray," she says, her voice breaking. "Always will be." Sarah, the young waitress, slips him a note with his change. Her handwriting shaky but clear. "Thank you for standing up." It's not just gratitude, it's a shift, a reclaiming of the diner's heart. Raymond tucks the note in his pocket, next to his flag pin, and nods, his throat tight. He's not used to this, the attention, the thanks. He's always been the man in the background, the one who shows up, does the job, and moves on. The town feels different in the days that follow. The Iron Hawks don't return, their absence a relief that ripples through Maple Street's shops and sidewalks. A week later, a letter arrives at Raymond's modest home, the envelope stamped with the mayor's seal. He's named Honorary Citizen of the Year, not for the confrontation, but for what he represents. Decades of service, quiet strength, the kind of courage that doesn't need a spotlight. The local paper runs a story. Its headline simple: "Veteran stands tall at Betty's." It's not about the slap or the soldiers, but about respect, about a man who reminded a town what it means to hold ground. Raymond reads it once, then sets it aside, his fingers brushing the new glasses he wears, a gift from the optometrist who wouldn't take his money. They're stronger than the old ones, and he smiles, thinking maybe sometimes you have to lose something to see clearly. Travis sends a letter too, handwritten, the ink smudged like he struggled with the words. "I was wrong," it says. "Learned something about strength that day. Sorry." Raymond reads it over coffee, his kitchen quiet except for the tick of the clock. He doesn't forgive Travis, not exactly, but he understands him. A man who thought power was noise, not sacrifice. He tucks the letter in a drawer next to his Purple Heart and moves on. The diner becomes a beacon, its corner booth now called the Veterans Table. Other former soldiers start stopping by, sharing stories with Raymond, their voices low, their laughter warm. Matthew joins him every Tuesday, their coffee cups side by side, their talks weaving between promotions, memories, the lake they'll fish again when summer comes. It's a new tradition, one that pulls them closer, that heals the scars they don't name. The town learns, too. Kids at the high school start a project, collecting stories from local veterans, their notebooks filled with names and battles Raymond recognizes. A mural goes up on Maple Street, its colors bright against the brick, a soldier's silhouette, not Raymond's face, but his spirit, standing tall. He walks past it one evening, his limp slight, his flag pin catching the streetlight. He doesn't stop, but he feels it, the way the town has claimed him, not as a hero, but as one of their own. Betty's diner thrives, its walls now lined with more photos, not just of wars, but of moments. Raymond shaking hands, Matthew saluting, soldiers laughing over pie. It's a place of pride again, a reminder that courage doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Raymond thinks of his father, the man who taught him to face bullies, not to win, but to teach. He thinks of Matthew, who watched him that day, who learned what it means to stand for something bigger. He thinks of the soldiers who came, who saw in him the leader he's always been. The lesson wasn't for Travis alone. It was for Sarah, who's braver now, for Betty, who holds her head higher, for the town, which remembers its roots. Raymond sips his coffee, the veteran's table solid beneath his elbows, and feels the weight of his 68 years, not as regret, but as purpose. He's still a soldier, not in war, but in life, showing up, standing tall, teaching respect one quiet moment at a time. The veterans' table becomes a story of its own, told and retold, not just in the town, but beyond, carried by those who hear it. Raymond doesn't seek the spotlight, but he accepts it, knowing it's not about him, but about what he represents. He's fought for his country, his son, his community, and now, for the right to sit in peace, to drink his coffee, to be seen. The diner is his ground, and he's held it not with fists, but with the dignity he's earned through decades of service. It's a victory, small in the eyes of the world, but vast in the hearts of those who know him. The morning light spills through Betty's windows, softer now, as if the day itself is exhaling. Raymond Carter leans back, his coffee cup empty, his son across from him, their silence comfortable, full of understanding. The veterans' table is more than wood and vinyl. It's a testament, a quiet rebellion against a world that sometimes forgets. Raymond's stand wasn't loud, but it was fierce, a reminder that real strength grows in the roots of sacrifice. in the choice to show up, to hold ground, to teach. He thinks of the soldiers he trained, the men he buried, the son he raised, and knows this moment will outlive him, carried in stories, in murals, in the way a town looks at its veterans. Courage doesn't retire. It lives in the small acts, the steady hands, the eyes that don't look away. Raymond adjusts his glasses, his flag pin glinting, and smiles. He's home not just in the diner, but in the life he's built, the lessons he's left, the respect he's earned. And that, he knows, is a fight worth winning,